Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Carola. I'm the CMO of Stelvex, and today we're joined by a friend from Syscoin, and I would really love Jack to introduce himself. Actually, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Jag or is it?
Yeah, that's correct. No, thanks for doing this, Maria. My name is Jagdeep Sidhu, Jag for short. Uh, we've been in the industry for uh, probably around 9 years now, and we've been focused a lot on business initiatives and enterprise initiatives on the blockchain, more than just simple value transfers or simple storage of coins on a blockchain. Try to extend that a little bit. Not going full Turing complete. We are going that direction, but not necessarily full Turing complete. But just whatever needs to be on the blockchain in the most efficient way to solve the 99% of the use cases that will touch upon the blockchain. The tokenization obviously is something that's critical that needs the double spend protection, so it needs to be on the blockchain. But a lot of other things, we've solved a lot of the problems for businesses without actually accruing the costs that some of these other systems have. The CryptoKitties, for example, causing gas fees. A lot of these things could have been solved off the blockchain. Of course, when you're talking about autonomous operations and smart contracts, then you have to eat the fees. But for our clients, sometimes we do have to opt in to go to the Ethereum route to solve it. But then the customers have, remorse when they're hit with the gas fees. So some of the things that we have been researching, we can touch on is the Turing complete models and layer two protocols to bring about efficiencies in those systems. When you talk about Syscoin, it's really a collection or ecosystem. It's a framework of all things blockchain, not only the Bitcoin utility aspect of store value and tokens being stored, payments, but also the decentralized applications done at scale, right? True global scales is the goal of a lot of these layer one blockchains. And we plan to kind of be a little bit closer to the Ethereum ecosystem. I guess you can think of us as a mix between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and position ourselves kind of similar to, what kind of Polygon Matic did. So having people being able to have a trustless mechanism to go across from Ethereum, but with the extra advantage of the security layers of Bitcoin added in, right? So since we're merge mined with Bitcoin, have the security of Bitcoin, but the flexibility of Ethereum. That's kind of the end vision of where we're going, and we've been working towards that vision for about 8 years now. And we made a big step just a couple weeks ago, and the first iteration of getting there. And the next and final step of our infrastructure is coming up with our, what we call it, the NEVM, which is our EVM infrastructure, which we can talk about later.
So you're more focused on building this ecosystem that helps people create and build than on the financial aspect, as far as I understand. So you're saying that it's a mix between Bitcoin and Ethereum, but there is a little bit less of the crypto as finance from what you have described.
Yeah, those are business initiatives you do on top, like the BlockFi and Celsius models. You're saying like the banking and DeFi and distributed apps that are built on top. Those depend on the infrastructure, and the infrastructure has to be secure, scalable, trustless, permissionless. It has to have all those aspects that Satoshi came and gave to us from day one, without sacrificing anything. It has to be secure first and foremost, and then the applications can be built on top in a secure way that where businesses won't have egg on their face in the case of infrastructure breaking down. We don't have an option for breaking down on this side of things because it's a distributed computational model. It's supposed to be decentralized. There's no company behind this sort of thing, so there's no one to say, please reboot your servers and you're back up online. It's you break once, you're dead. So these are very, very sensitive development procedures you have to go through to get these things live, which is why you're seeing the maturation of the technological side take so long, is because the world is just still learning. The engineers are still getting up to par. Generation Zs are still coming in and learning, and the engineers are still building up their knowledge. And it's barely been 10 years, so there's not that many experts. People that have been around maybe since 2011, the developers around then will be considered experts now, but a lot of them have moved on, or they don't have the complete vision because they haven't followed along. So we've been plugged in since day one, reading, researching, coding almost every day, as like a full-time thing. And also hearing from the enterprise side, on the business side, they come to us, since I'm also the CTO of Blockchain Foundry, we deal with the clients directly. We deal with the businesses and the enterprises and the Fortune 500 companies. They want solutions using the blockchain. There was a first phase of, let's do this private blockchain thing where we control everything, GDPR and all that stuff is built in, and we control the whole ecosystem. So there's a company behind it. If it breaks down, call the company, call IBM, tell them to reboot their servers and it's back online. But we're fundamentally kind of opposed to that idea, thinking that's just a short-term gaffe in the overall, sigmoidal curve of the growth. You have first the people that just don't understand it, they're not going to build on it. Then they try to build on their own version, private versions, and then they accept the public ones as self-evident and they build on those. So it was a lot of teaching and educating, but self-learning on their part, as well as they learned that security and decentralization is why we're all here with this tech. If you take that away, you really have nothing. And so the private permission blockchains maybe can solve, maybe make the shareholders happy for a short period of time. But as we're seeing with stuff like Hyperledger, a lot of it may not make sense unless it ties back to some public domain. And that's where, we've been educating people on. So also sometimes they provide critical business, the business acumen of these people is very high. And so they provide input to us saying, regulation and all these sorts of things. We start to learn about those things where we can apply it to our platform. And it's been a two-way street. So not only have we been on the technical side teaching people, we've been learning a lot on the regulatory and the business and the financial side, how to apply it properly. So we bridge the gap to average people. We know that, blockchain is something that the people are going to have to conform to, or businesses will have to conform to, similar to how they conform to the internet. The internet, you can't change the internet, but you can model yourself to build on top very similarly. But there needs to be sort of a halfway point here where we are dealing with regulators and compliance in a way that makes sense, to onboard the masses, and then slowly phase out the restrictions and compliance towards a full decentralized ecosystem as we learn how to deal with checking those things in a decentralized way, like doing KYC and AML properly.
You're already quite far on this way of spreading decentralization and ideas in blockchain and businesses. So, but how did it start? So what was the main idea of Syscoin when it just came around, and what was the main problem that you were trying to solve at the time? And probably it's still the problem now.
Yeah, we've had the vision of business on the blockchain, and that's multifaceted. But we first thought of as there's Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is just a store of value, and it's not a transaction processor. But it would be nice if we can do basic things like digital identity, decentralized marketplaces, built-in escrow system, token platform. Those are the main use cases. And so we started there. We developed those features, and then we did something called a crowd sale before ICOs. So it was before Ethereum, and we raised a little bit of money, but the escrow agent behind that kind of was fraudulent himself, and so it was kind of a grassroots project where we had limited funding, pretty much little to no funding to get off the ground, but we still did it. for the sake of the community and building something that we believed in. We were invested emotionally into the ideas that this was going to bring change in the world for a better way. And so we kept developing it. The first thing was Bitcoin security model is the gold standard. So we tied Syscoin's mining to Bitcoin, but done in a green way. We're not expending any extra energy. We're leveraging the energy of the Bitcoin miners, which, for the good or bad, it's going to be there. It's going to be around. So we use that energy to also merge mine Syscoin. So now we've got security, right? So we've got the security of 51% attack covered. And then we layer on things that just Bitcoin can't do. As we got towards the decentralized marketplace angles and the escrows, we realized a lot of those things could be solved off chain. The decentralized marketplace was kind of a gray area on the regulatory side as well, dark markets and stuff like that. So, it would be one of those things where we'd have to kind of go anonymous to do that, but it was also not really relevant to do a lot of that on the blockchain for data reasons. Like you're going back to the CryptoKitty stuff then, where all the stuff's on the blockchain causing the fees to go up. So what's needed to do a proper decentralized marketplace is just a decentralized identity system, tying it to a contract system, which is publicly auditable. So there's many ways to do that in a very similar concept. And it all boils down to where the data is stored and data availability. And again, I'll touch on that. But where we're going towards with Syscoin is going to enable these sorts of systems where we circle back to day one and say, okay, these are the systems we wanted to really do from day one, but we didn't have the scaling we didn't technically have the ability to scale these up. So let's develop the ecosystem, the technical infrastructure to get to a point where it could scale if we wanted to build those using the blockchain. And that's where we are headed now. So then we circle back and say, okay, now the original ideas of marketplaces, identities, these kind of things are now possible. And by the way, they may remain compliant. And so as a company or BCF or someone else involved in the Syscoin community could stand up and run these legally, but still solve the critical problems of disrupting eBay, disrupting Amazon. Those are tall tasks. It's probably not going to happen overnight, but at least it will offer an edge, an opportunity for someone that will say, we can make money because putting it on the blockchain is much cheaper, faster, more trustworthy, more reliant, and digital identity itself, it enables all sorts of things outside of that, plugging into a vast variety of use cases using the blockchain, decentralized finance, and all sorts of things. When you start talking about identities, not just individual applications, you're talking about a unicorn where many business verticals stem outside of that.
How far, those are definitely big goals and a great cause. How far do you think you are right now to saying, yeah, this is what we wanted to do from day one? And what were the main kind of milestones that you have already passed to get there?
Mm-hmm. First was the realization of what belongs on the blockchain, what doesn't belong on the blockchain in today's world. So we stripped out a lot of those features and boiled it down to token platform. What we wanted to create was a generalized token platform, not specific like ERC20 versus 721, 1159, that kind of thing, but more like one specific, I guess you can consider it, smart contract that represents all token, generalized tokens that need to be settled on a blockchain. And so doing that, we realized it's because we're kind of forked off of Bitcoin, it makes sense for us to be a UTXO model, whereas from day one we were an account-based model, kind of like Ethereum. We started to model tokens after ERC20, thinking how to fit it into the Bitcoin model rather than the other way around, taking Bitcoin and thinking how can we do tokenization on that in a secure way. Since we consider Bitcoin the gold standard of quality and community and also the security aspect side of things, made more sense to build into something like that. So that's where we started now, is figure out what belongs there, we realized token platform is something that truly belongs on the blockchain. So, okay, convert it to UTXO model. A UTXO model allows to create a generalized framework for tokens. So generalized framework, I mean, you can create fractional tokens. You can create general NFT tokens, like how you have 721. You can fractionalize them, or you can create fungible tokens, all within the same asset. It's more intuitive for businesses to say, I have one asset and I can issue NFTs from that. I can issue fractional NFTs from that. I can issue fungible tokens from that, all from the same supply. And that encapsulates all these types of tokens, security tokens, general NFTs that you see on NFT marketplaces, fungible currencies, loyalty, money, stable coins, all those sorts of things. So that's what we've just released now. Is we've started from all these things using the blockchain with security in mind, to security in mind, but only certain stuff on the blockchain that needs to be there, to how do we harden that, make it production ready so that you have a general platform for tokens, and release that, and then think about, okay, now Turing complete models and general computation, how do we layer that in so that if you're doing more than just tokens, you're doing smart city, IoT, AI initiatives, how do you bring that to the table in a scalable way? And the only other thing on general framework for tokens is one critical piece that's missing in a lot of these blockchains is compliance. And that's why private permission blockchains exist, because of the compliance, regulatory, GDPR, and all that stuff, where the data is stored. So we actually just layered in compliance right into the blockchain, and we said the token has an opt-in strategy to enable compliance itself. So if you want to enable it as a token, your stable coin or your security token, you can enable something called Notary, which will allow off-chain business rule sets to be applied to every transaction on the blockchain. Right. So what that means is, like, if I have a transaction and then I apply Notary to it, the Notary would be kind of like, I guess you can consider it like a multi-sig, someone like BitGo, which would be doing the checks on the transactions, making sure that you, if it's a compliance use case, it would make sure that KYC AML is done, right? KYC AML has been done on that address. Wallet to wallet rules are checked. You know, now that FATF rules, travel rules are being enforced, even addresses being withdrawn from exchanges are going to need to be registered. So this is the direction we're headed towards. So it makes sense that you'd have an on-chain version of that. So every check that is done is signed off by the notary. And the goal of the blockchain is very simple. It's just to check there's a signature from the notary. That's it. It's not running these rules on the blockchain or doing all sorts of complex things. It's something very simple. It's, you decide there's a notary on the asset. You say, here's the notary address. And then when a transaction comes through, you simply check, has that address signed off on this transaction or not? And what happens with the notary is open to interpretation. You could do smart contracts, you can enforce smart contracts, you can do KYC AML checks, you could do double spend protection, so you could do instant redemption of assets for like in-game or whatever you need to do. You could do security checks. If you have a prospectus or a Reg D for a security token, you can enforce those rules. So now your security token can actually be on a public blockchain, because all those rules that you have in your prospectus are enforced regardless of which jurisdiction you're in. So it becomes like a global security token, enabler. But it's again open to interpretation. So we're Blockchain Foundry's goals to, some of our clients said compliance needs to be built in if you want this thing to grow, because there's many use cases there. So now that compliance is built in, our goal is to productize some of that. Of course, anyone can come and productize it. It's open source protocol, but we're trying to productize the notary aspect. So it's a service that would have the licenses, the travel rules, all the stuff built in. People can come in, they can raise money, do security tokens, do fractional NFTs representing land titles or anything like that. You could do generic NFTs, decentralized options without notary. That's what we consider a generalized token framework, and that's kind of where we're at today.
How many users and how many active like businesses and individuals are on board right now, and what do you think is needed to make it more widespread and understood, possibly? Because you told before that you're educating the users, you are telling them how to use everything, how to use the infrastructure, why is it important, why is it needed, and what are the main goals to possibly make it well understood and really adopted by businesses, by individuals?
Yeah, the education and marketing and all that stuff is a critical component. We couldn't really get to that unless we had something to show these people that here's our solution. So since from day one we've been kind of evolving to this point, we've held off on the marketing message of this is what we are until we've had that. Now that we have it, we're starting to focus more on, okay, here's our SDKs. This is how you build it. Here's our documentation. Here's videos of how to use it. This is what we think is an intuitive way to get involved. And the Blockchain Foundry is an enterprise enabler where clients come to us regularly. We push them to use Syscoin where it makes sense. In a lot of cases, it makes sense. And we take on those projects that want to build on something like Syscoin. Most of them, they don't know what they want, and it ends up just being, we just need a token and we need to use that token somehow. They start thinking they need smart contracts when they really don't. And so we can build those on Syscoin, and that adoption comes from there, because now these enterprises, they're on something that's not going to worry them about scale and costs, and it's going to solve their problems. And so we're, as a company, we are working to solve actively to build on our protocol, and also on the foundation side, actively working on the marketing messages and the SDK documentation and the videos and that sort of thing, so people can really understand how to get involved and build on it. And the next step there is, once you have those sorts of things, you have the hackathons, you have the developers start to come in and try it out and say, okay, well, I can do some cool stuff here. And it's cheap, fast, and it's just like any other platform, but it's very intuitive because it's all built with business in mind. It's not just a hacker's toolkit that just comes in and they can create contracts on their own. This is already set up for everybody to use. It's like an enforced smart contract, if you will. But following the Bitcoin idiom, it's all it is just a coin platform, and what you can do with it is almost limitless. But of course, it is limited to the Turing complete stuff, which is the next thing that we're looking at is unlocking some of those other use cases, not just payments.
I had a question in mind about the general kind of widespreadness of blockchain, not as a financial, not service, but asset more, because everybody's trading, everybody's trying to do something, everybody's interested in NFTs now and tokens and all of this. But do you see the growth as rapid as this financial NFT Dogecoin stuff in this blockchain technology interest? So are there more people interested in applying it in their businesses, interested in something more complicated maybe than just creating a token for whatever reason, like not really knowing why? And is there more kind of a well thought approach? So is this education that you are trying to push, that other the companies are trying to push, doing something to the user already, or is it kind of like still lagging a little bit?
No, I think that's where we've come a long way, and the companies, they're all concerned about regulation. The anarchists and the kids coding up in their basement, some of them are become billionaires. They're less concerned about the regulation side of things, right? And so businesses, that's all they're concerned about, is how can we do this safely without our company being shut down or fined.
Yeah, obviously.
And that's just how it is. We know the next wave of companies are going to care less, right? They care more about decentralization, but enterprises today, they care about it. So you need a solution for them. If you don't have them on board, then you have this big battle of old versus new, and the world is pretty much run by these Fortune 500 companies today, which have been set up on the old guard. They're going to switch one day. They're going to become more geared towards decentralized approaches, but it's not going to happen overnight. So you need something there for them to come in and have peace of mind that they could still be compliant. So having just a token makes a lot of sense in some cases. It's just like how their stocks are, right? They have not fully indicative of what they are. They're just a company with people. How do you assign value to it? It's based on how much profit you make. So the value of the token goes up. It's how much shareholding rights there are. It's how much dividends you pay out. All those things factor into the cost of how much someone would pay for that token. But why is that any different than just a token out there that may represent your company in the crypto world, right? But the problems there are, again, like the token economy idea is cool. Everything is tokenized and becomes more valuable because you have one record keeper, which is the blockchain, and it cannot be fraudulent. So you don't have central bookkeepers, which is really valuable. There's no brokers and stuff like that. But you still have this issue of if you got a securities token, it's got to be regulated like a security, just because of rules that have been in place. And there are good reasons for a lot of those rules as well, but it is what it is. Those rules aren't going to change overnight. So in order for those things to survive in the new token economy, there needs to be some compliant measures need to be built in. So that's why we've been thinking about compliance a little bit and how we can build it in. And we're not compliance experts, but the experts will come in and build on it. But we made it very generic, so these experts could come and start to build on, and then we will become experts as we get into the product side of things. So it's very interesting that a lot of the solutions out there, full decentralization or full private permissionless, is nothing really in between. And using the public infrastructure is going to be critical for businesses to understand that other ancillary businesses that might want to connect to your system, it would be harder for them to trust you if you're not on a public chain, at least that settlement side of things. So having the settlement on the public chain is going to be critical to invoke the trust of all the actors that might use your system. The compliance is just a required aspect of it to be able to have it operate in our real world lives without being shut down by the regulators. So, it seems like I'm saying the regulators are the bad guys, but they've got their rules and they've gotten marching orders because of specific actions that could happen with money or securities. And those rules have been built up by decades of experience, and they're not going to, again, like they may be right or wrong, but they're not going to change right away. So, we offer the solution for the companies that are scared, that say we'd like the token economy approach, but we can't get in. But we offer this option so that they could get in now and still benefit from the public permissionless token economy on the settlement of the token side. So you can have one record keeping decentralized book of what happened in your system, reduce the brokerage costs and all these other middlemen costs that are involved in their day-to-day, whatever they do, either securities or loyalty programs or even currency like stable coins.
You've been talking about regulations and compliance a lot. Obviously, that's a very important thing in what you do and in businesses generally. And we have a question from the user here on Twitter. It's about the technological progress of Cisco and how it will be in the future. But probably I would like to make it more general. Hope I'm forgiven for that. What is the general progress that you are planning to make in like 6 months or a year? What are the most important things that you are planning to do, both technologically and business wise? probably like ideologically even.
Yeah. Technologically, there's a real good path that we're on. My thoughts are, there's Ethereum is migrating away from proof of work to become, greener, quote unquote, but also to try to solve their scalability problems. They've had to go to proof of stake because they need instant finality for what they're trying to do on their system. Essentially, Ethereum is just going to be a system that manages data. That's all it's going to be, right? Data availability. In order to do data availability, you have to employ strategies which require slashing conditions and finality guarantees. Which, when you're adding finality guarantees, you're actually removing a little bit of security from the system, because now you have no other option. It's either final or not final. There's no statistics or no economic rationale or incentives to make it secure. It's either secure or not secure. And if it's not secure, you get penalized, if you're wrong about it. So they're going with that route, sacrificing a little bit of what I believe is a security and what proof of work is doing over top of that. But they're doing that to become greener and also compliant with what they want to do to scale their blockchain. But they did that right around the time when zero knowledge proofs are starting to come around. And zero knowledge proofs have proved that you can scale computation without actually touching a blockchain. You don't need the blockchain. You don't need consensus. You don't need every node to verify every transaction anymore. You can have black boxes that do your computation, and it's just as secure as if every node in the world did that computation. And that's a strong statement, because now that means that you can scale as fast as one computer can. A supercomputer can compute all those smart contracts, or I don't want to really call them smart contracts, but maybe general computations. They're just programs. You run a program, and it's saying I want to do X, Y, Z actions. A black box can calculate it for you and give you a result, which is mathematically going to be correct if you verify it. And the verification of it is very fast and cheap. So that breakthrough allows us to think about it, the problems that Ethereum was trying to solve with scale in a little bit different way. For one, they decided to go to proof of stake and scaling and sharding before the advent of zero knowledge rollups and zero knowledge proofs. With the advent of optimistic rollups and zero knowledge rollups, we've seen that they're going to have more than enough scale. We're talking about 30 to 40,000 transactions a second, which is way more than what Visa, MasterCard, are doing, even potentially even at their peak of their day of the summer holidays. It's way more. Christmas maybe it's going to be a little bit more, but now that you have these fundamental breakthroughs happening, we are rethinking the solutions of what layer one should really be, right? Applying these concepts. First and foremost, we've always had the thought that Bitcoin is the gold standard for security and decentralization, right? Because every node does their checks, and it fully complies, and there's economic rationale on the mining side of things. So there's no taking away any of that security. But the general computations can now just be replaced by zero knowledge proofs, right? And so you can kind of see that there's two sets of things now. There's just storage of your money in a fast, secure way, and there's general computation happening, which is what the Ethereum model was: general computation, world computer, right? General computation happening in a very secure way. How do you merge those concepts? And that's kind of where we're going with our, we're calling it NEVM, network enforced Ethereum virtual machine. And we think that the fundamental breakthroughs of zero knowledge proofs is going to allow us to build, almost a layer two roll up hierarchy, if you will, systems of roll-ups where companies will come and they'll build on the roll-up layer instead of going directly to layer one and hitting the main chain. They'll be doing transactions on the layer twos, and that's where Ethereum is going anyways, regardless of sharding. All the companies are moving towards layer two, but again, they're proof of stake and less secure, probably less tested, not academically verified consensus systems. Whereas we are sticking to the tried, tested, and true Bitcoin mining. Oh, by the way, with green mining, because Syscoin's merge mine, so it's green. We get the same security, but we apply these same concepts of rollups on our system. So where we're going towards is having a general computational framework, right? And having the generalized asset framework we have today is still important, because even those transactions, people are not going to be transacting on actual Syscoin chain. They will be likely transacting in a payment channel mechanism similar to Lightning networks, where the assets will also be on the Lightning network. So if you go to Starbucks, you pay for your Canadian stablecoin, and Starbucks takes USD stablecoin. There'll be people in the payment channel that will do the conversions for you for a small fee. But Starbucks will get the USD stablecoin. You've paid Canadian stablecoin. May or may not require compliance, which is built in. Starbucks gets their money, and it happens within a split second and with really pretty much negligible fees, right? Right. You can't really that use case is going to be the optimal use case for money transmission, but the general commutation side of things, to be able to execute complex algorithms and IoT smart city type of things, where if then then else something else happens, or you input your money and a series of actions happen, that sort of thing is a general computational framework that needs to be solved at scale. And we think with the advent of zero knowledge proofs, we can scale that in a really easy way. So just to give you a broad vision of how it potentially work is, we have an EVM chain that's running alongside a Syscoin, and Syscoin is securing the EVM chain. So it's kind of like Syscoin is telling EVM when the blocks are formed, right? So it's kind of the parent, and the EVM chain is just like an Ethereum chain that's running. And then the layer 2 rollups, we're calling them ZK rollups. That's where your application's living. That's where, say, you're running an AMM or some decentralized exchange. Your trades are all happening on there. The users are asking the layer 2 rollup, please execute my trade as fast as you can, right? Here's a small amount of fee, maybe 10,000th of a penny or something like that. The provider that's running that rollup is just like a server running in the cloud. Could be a physical server, and they're running actions in a zero knowledge proof language, which could be transcompiled to Solidity, so just smart contract that's executing these trades, and crunching all the trades in one proof, right? So 1 million trades get crunched out in one proof, and just that one proof is put on the blockchain. So if it's logarithmic in scale, so if you have 1 million, then you only have up to say 20 a size of it crunches down, so it's 2 to the 20. So it ends up being, say, 1,000 bytes for 1 million transactions, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting from the point of scalability. I believe that this is one of the main problems that the chains are usually acquainting and stumble upon and can't solve at the end, and try to solve all this time.
Yeah, it ends up being, well, the verification as well, right? Because now, instead of verifying 1 million trades, which may take an average computer an hour to verify, you're verifying a small proof, which might be about 50 milliseconds to verify. And you're verifying a zero knowledge proof. And also privacy implications, right? You don't even know which trades are involved. So that's the ultimate scaling. There's also the decentralized versions of that. Like, you may run the rollups where you still post the trades on the main chain, but you don't post the full data set. You only post to, from, an amount. And you don't have to verify signatures. You don't have to verify anything. You're just verifying the actual trades that happen. And the zero knowledge proof coupled with that data makes it for a decentralized, fully decentralized system, very much like layer 1. No trade-offs, but you get all this exponential scalability. So that would be like kind of like in my paper that I've created, it's say 4 million transactions per second if you go with full scalability, where it's just one small proof being put on the chain and all the transactions are happening off chain, where the data is completely off, and maybe something like 100,000 or 400,000 transactions a second if the systems were fully decentralized, where the trades are still put on the chain. They're not actually individually checked for signatures, so it's very fast. But the proof coupled with the data is going to take up more block space, right? And because more block space is taken up, you get less theoretical output. So it's like a difference of about 10x. But I would imagine some will do full off the blockchain because it's cheaper, and it might be privacy or compliant solutions like insurance models or lending, borrowing type of things, which require compliance and GDPR, and data has to be off the blockchain. And then there will be the fully decentralized ones like the DEXs and those sorts of things that might want to be fully decentralized, and users are aware that they're fully decentralized. They'll put more trust and value in those systems. So
that's a lot of information from the point of businesses and perspectives for the people running something on the blockchain too. So, but probably the most interesting thing is scalarification. Is still, this is the goal that you're definitely going for. And just to probably wrap it all up and kind of summarize the things for the users who have not been encountering, who have not been building on blockchain, for example. So what is probably the most useful, this is a little bit of tautology, but useful use case for an individual who wants to use his coin and who wants to do something with it and try to create not apps, but at least some sort of implication of blockchain into their lives?
Well, firstly, anything that touches blockchain and people or things is going to require digital identity. And that was one of our first things. We say in Syscoin 1, we had a digital identity alias system, right? So what you could do on these rollups is have a decentralized version of identity built in, where any identifier could be registered, and it's done through a zero knowledge proof, and the proof is posted to the blockchain. But now you have an irrevocable auditable proof of who you are, and then have systems be able to cross-reference those identities. And once you have an identity, now you can build your web applications referencing those identities. Also, if you need data sharing between people, it's easier once you have these identities. And we've worked in the digital identity space for quite a while. We were one of the founding members of the Decentralized Identity Foundation, which was started by Microsoft and a lot of companies in there. But companies been mostly building in the Hyperledger stack there, the private blockchain. And we can take very similar ideas there and apply it. And so data sharing using zero knowledge proofs. So you have your self-sovereign, PID info, and you can share it without giving up that info. Like, I'm over 18, without actually giving up your age. You could prove you're over 18, but you need the blockchain to at least have the certification of the first registered transaction that gets put on saying this is you, and then all the other stuff happens off the blockchain. It could even be a roll-up system if you want autonomous. So once you have that digital ID layer, and you can leverage that and have the app layers plug right into these IDs, right? Almost anything that you do on the blockchain requires some type of username or user ID, right? So you would be able to tap right into that. And Ethereum has something similar called ENS, and the hope was there to everyone has ENS, and all the distributed apps on Ethereum will leverage ENS, but very similar, but just more scalable and more interoperable across. Once you have an ENS, it's just a namespace, but with a digital identity, you'd be able to do a lot more. You'd be able to share information. It's self-sovereign. You have PID info. You have banks attesting that you are who you are, or governments attesting that your passport's valid and give you a credential. Then you can share that credential to someone else to get a loan or doing DeFi stuff. That's kind of where we see this thing all growing. So we're right on the grassroots of ground level, right? We're doing the same stuff Ethereum's doing, Solana, ADA, AVA. We're doing very similar stuff. We're more aligned with what Ethereum Foundation's up to with scaling using layer 2. I don't think AVA, Solana, those ones are really thinking about layer 2 because they've pushed the other direction. They said everything has to happen on layer 1. I don't think they maybe are too aware of the zero knowledge proof layers yet, how they actually can solve the problems in a more scalable way. It's a fundamental breakthrough. And so we are thinking about layer 1 is just like very minimalistic if possible, just like it's almost like a court system where the only time you would really have to go to the blockchain is if you need to touch the court system and invoke the costs of the court. But everything else is going to happen off the blockchain. And so that's how we think about it. And we don't want the users to go and touch the blockchain because it's complex. So there'll be web layers on top, on the roll-up layers, which will be very convenient, take a small bit of fee, a very small fee, not like what Ethereum is taking, and make it very convenient users and keep the security intact. And that's our goal, to keep, ultimately, the whole thing is secured through the Bitcoin ecosystem. And you don't want people to have egg on their face at the end of the day if that layer breaks. In Ethereum, there's this big risk that maybe there's some attack vector and it causes all the validators to self-ban each other or something like that. When you get into staking and sharding, there's a whole set of concerns there. And we've already proven that the Nakamoto consensus proof of work works, and it's ultimately the most secure. It's just about how can we not contribute more electricity to something like that, be green if possible, still leverage the work and apply concepts of what Ethereum wants to do about scaling. And we've kind of, done that. And we think that there's a real good solution there, and create that tomorrow's ecosystem for, I called it in my paper, the vision for the next generation world computer. So it's kind of what it looks like is applications that could do computing, and then your coins, the tokens that we can already do that today. The computation side is what we're working on next.
This is great to hear. Thank you very much for all this information. We're running out of time here. Unfortunately, there's a lot of useful info that hopefully everybody will enjoy who will be watching this interview. And to wrap it up, do you want to probably give an advice or tell something in the end to everybody who will be watching this interview later after we edit it and everything like that?
I just think there's a lot of maybe investors aren't really too savvy on what the state of the industry is right now. There's a lot of smart people that kind of know what's happening and are planning for it. I think people end up getting a little bit scared through headlines, and when people are put on pedestals and they actually they have a voice, they seem to cling. And that's natural, right? Herd mentality. If someone's saying something, it must be true, and they believe in it. I just think people should be able, we do want to give people the liberty to have their own thoughts and feelings, but I think a lot of times, particularly recently, social media and those sorts of things are very easily brainwashing investors into thinking something, and it may just be a fact that we are at a very, very critical time where we've seen blockchains really take off, cryptocurrencies really take off. In this new wave, it's still ongoing, and there's this big rush towards accumulating as much as they can before the moment, point at which it's the point of no control, the point of no return, where if you're not in, you're not going to be able to take advantage of any of these things. So valuations are through the roof. And a lot of people are taking advantage of that by telling people, there's this wrong or that wrong. Bitcoin mining is there's too much pollution. They better fix themselves. Oh, but Doge is cool. We're working with Doge, those sorts of things. And people are easily able to sway investors' sentiment. And I would advise people not to fall for those traps and do their own homework. If they can't do their homework, then pay someone to do the homework for them. and make their own decisions based on that, and even turn off social media. And just doing that will make people's lives a lot better. They'll be able to sleep at night and not worry about things, because at the end of the day, your own convictions, your own fundamental reasonings are usually correct, right? 90% of the time. The technicals don't really matter. It's more about the fundamentals. So if you know something, you feel it inside, your conviction of something, because you feel strongly about it, most of the time your first intuition is right. Some of the times you get it wrong, like you thought maybe some scaling solution is correct and ends up being incorrect because there's some new information, so you have to evolve. But a lot of the times what's out there and what you believe and what you learn and you apply your homework to it, a lot of the times your first intuitions, your convictions are pretty good, and you should follow those. So that's my only advice. It comes at a time when we're seeing a lot of this in the market, and so I felt it's important to get it out there so that, you know, we've been through the cycles, right? We've been through 3-4 cycles already with Syscoin. We've seen it, right? And it's been better and better each time, but it's always been the cycles. So you know, one of these times the cycle is going to break, and you know, the train's going to leave the station, and people are wondering what happened. Why didn't the pattern repeat? Or because this guy said something in social media, I believed him, so I sold, and then everything took off, and I missed out on a lifetime opportunity, which is what this is. It's a lifetime opportunity. I think once in a lifetime opportunity, maybe multi-generational opportunity. And I just don't want the people, at least watching this, to forget that fact, that this doesn't really come around too often. I think probably what we're doing here is as big or bigger than the internet itself, because we're talking about value here. Internet was about unfiltered information and sharing of information. Now we're securing that value and information, which is even more important. So I think we can close off with that.
Thank you very much, Jack. This was very heartfelt, actually. So thank you very much for joining us. Just for everybody watching it, I'm reminding that today we were joined by Jack from Syscoin, and we talked a lot of things here. And it was great having you with us. Thank you very much for your time and for answering all these questions.
No problem. It's been my pleasure.
Great. Thank you.